Alright everybody, hello, 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 and hello. Today I'm going to be presenting Dream Theater's A Broken Man, a relatively quick analysis video. Now what do I mean by relatively quick? Well, if you've been a member of this channel or you've been subscribing for a while, you know that we go into every single note, every single time change, blah blah blah. You get the point. Most of those videos I do, especially at a Dream Theater video, can go well past the 2-hour mark, sometimes even the 3-hour mark. So if you want to watch some of those other videos I've done, you're interested in Dream Theater stuff, go back and watch it, because it's going to be more of this, but more in depth. Alright? So this is kind of be like, this is going to kind of be, I almost mistakenly messed up there. What this is going to kind of be is a bit of a quicker brush through the song than I would ordinarily do, right? I learned a bunch of the riffs, pretty much all the riffs in the songs, all the chord progressions, and all the critical elements that really tie the composition together, alright? So that's form, function, and a pretty broad analysis of it. So I'm not going to be showing you like all the fret numbers and whatnot, but there are a lot of ways that we can, that this sort of information can help you big time. And especially, I didn't learn the guitar solo either, but I actually really recommend that you watch that portion anyway, because I'm not going to just show you the fret numbers and show you all that kind of stuff, right? Although I will do that in a video in the future, but I'm not just going to show you that kind of stuff. I'm going to give you sort of a more broad overview of different scales, different sort of tones you can use to achieve that sound. And really just kind of get a better idea of what's going on in John Petrucci's mind while he's playing this solo. It could definitely improve your improvisational skills too. I'm pretty sure this was not an improvised solo, at least not most of it anyway. There seems to be a pretty, dialed in type of thing. But still, that doesn't really matter. Learning solos and learning things verbatim like that would help you, and learning those scale shapes as well will also help you get through improvising on your own and getting better at playing solos. Okay, so just something to keep in mind here. These broad brush analyses are useful in a different sense, right? If you're a songwriter, you want to write a song, hey, this kind of stuff really comes in handy. And it's also interesting to see how the chords progress, how the form is laid out, and all that good stuff as well. By the end of this video, I'm also going to give my own personal rating, which I don't usually do. Alright, so there's going to be a lot more conjecture here, some more subjective analysis, as opposed to the objective analysis that I like to stick to. Alright? But as always, there's going to be corny jokes, dirty jokes, weird things that the Dream Theater guys do with each other, with 69s, 6/9 chords. They use a lot of 6/9 chords, and guess what? I have to make a lot of jokes about 69s because let's face it, having a sophomoric sense of humor is something that we do on this channel, and hopefully the members of Dream Theater can appreciate that. A lot of jokes have been made about this band in the past, and they seem to have a good sense of humor overall, so I'm honored to make fun of them along with the rest of the world. Alright, enough babbling along, let's get into some damn notes. How about that? So, let's start off with the intro of the song, alright? The very introduction. It starts off sort of simplistic, with one note being played on top of another note, and it starts moving from there. And so basically we have a small, medium, and a large portion, and I'm going to go over that for this first intro. Starts off with a D sharp on top of an E. Alright, that's a major 7th interval here, like this. That goes 4 times total before it finally moves on to the next note. But let's just talk about the rhythm there for a sec. This is at a 5/8 or 5/4 rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4, 5. 4, 5. 4, 5. 4, 5. And it's basically an on-off, off, off-on-on pattern, right? On-off, off, off-on, on, on-off, off, off-on, on. And that just lays out the syncopation that's involved here. Because the first note is on the beat, the next one is off, the next one is off, the next one is off, and the next 2 are on. And that creates that 5/8 or 5/4 measure, right? Off, on, oh, the other way, I'm sorry, I'm so stupid. Let me do it again. On, off, on, off, on. It's like a binary annihilation glitch, a bag. So here we go. Now, beyond that, we go one note ahead, all right? Now, I'm going to explain what happens in a bit, but there's really 1, 2, 3, 4 different things that happen now on top of the E as it ascends. This is the medium-sized progression here, which is going to repeat. So, watch. Starts off on D sharp to major 7th. Then, F with a tritone, that's a flatted 2. G sharp, major 3rd. And B flat, or A sharp, that's the sharp 4. That then goes around to repeat one more time. Now let's take a look at that tonality. We have a D sharp, that's a major 7th. That's incredibly dissonant. We go to an F with a B on top. That is incredibly dissonant. That's a flatted 2, all right, with a tritone on top of it. Then the G sharp, not as dissonant, but it doesn't really help the cause here, right? We're mostly dissonant. And then the final one, A sharp, that's the tritone or the sharp 4th, which kind of usually indicates some kind of Lydian function, but here we just have a very crazy type of idea going on. And let me check my notes here. It's an E major 7 with a flatted 9th and a sharp 11th. Wow, that's a weird chord, huh? E major 7, okay, with a flatted 9th and a sharp 11th. That's what it sounds like. Here, I'll play it clean. That is an ugly sounding chord, and quite frankly you would probably never use this, but actually it doesn't sound too bad the more you play it. It just goes to show you that the longer you expose yourself to something bad, the more likely you are to have to enjoy it. It doesn't mean you actually enjoy it. It just means that you get used to it to a point that you develop Stockholm Syndrome, and, you know, that's just kind of what happens. But that's the sound. E major 7 with a flat 9th and a sharp 11th. If that's on a jazz chord, then I don't know what is, okay? So that's basically what continues to move along as we progress. It's an absolutely crazy, crazy, crazy scale. And you know what else it does? It's so radical that it completely avoids the root at the beginning, all right? You think we go to the E, but that would just sound wrong. So we just bypass the E and go straight to the F. Pretty crazy. It's pretty much just intervallic. It moves up stepwise and, you know, small leaps. So let's go up to the top of the big shape now. So we did the little shape, which was just the D sharp. We did the medium-sized shape, which was the D sharp, F, G sharp, and the A sharp. Now let's go up the big old shape, which is like this. It goes way up, watch, to F, that's the flat 2, G sharp, that's the 3rd. I'm spazzing out here, I'm trying to talk. Then we go up to the 5th, that's a B. That's just a power chord spread out, so that's nice. And then we have this. We go back to the major 7th, and then that's that flat 2 once again, or flat 9th right up at the top. So really, really driving the point home. Dissonance, dissonance, consonance, but only briefly. Dissonance, consonance, dissonance, dissonance, and keeping it all over E to make sure it's as tense as it could possibly be. Now there's one other thing that happens right after that. You know, we hit that big F at the peak, and then we go into this riff. That just serves as an E to basically set up our tonality and essentially just transition us into the next part. Oh yeah, I completely forgot. Don't forget to tune your guitars down to D standard, all right? That's an entire whole step down, the entire guitar. Now I've been speaking in terms of E, and I'm going to continue to speak in terms of E because it's just confusing if I don't. You know, guitarists, we learn things one way, we gotta just keep it that way, all right? So the open is not gonna be a D, it's gonna be an E, all right? So I'm gonna do it as it is classically known. The next part of the intro that I'm gonna call Intro 2 kind of starts to introduce some of the form and function of the verse sections that we're going to see. So the moving chords that eventually start to happen here. But it doesn't fully give us that. It's more of a foreshadowing because it's a lot of just single notes being played, all right? And the keyboards don't really do anything different either. So it's a riff that kind of sounds like this. It's all palm muted, and it's on E, B flat, B, F, F. One more time. So right there we have the root note, we got the flat 5, there's the regular 5, and the flatted 2. All right, so basically embodying all of those notes that we talked about. The second half of that goes like this. D, D sharp. So we're back on that. All right, so we're back to that nasty dissonance here. But here we have a flatted 7th, which is interesting because originally we didn't have that at all, but now we do. Would you look at that? We're changing stuff around here, but whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's just playing single notes either way, and it just sounds kind of cool. Also, this note, E, D, D sharp, that uses a very odd usage of a term called encirclement. That's when you have chromatic notes encircling one note in the middle. So that D sharp is being encircled by an E and a D. It's being swarmed and overwhelmed from behind and the front. The next part, intro number 3, kind of goes through this E Lydian dominant idea, but it starts to actually give us the chord progression a little bit more. All right, so the first part starts like this. So that's what I mean by the E Lydian dominant, because it has the major 3rd, the sharp 4th, 5th, and the flatted 7th. But that's not the entire story, all right? So basically what's happening here is we start off with an E major chord, right? And then we go to this. Well, that's just an E and a D played together, but if you listen to the keyboards, Jordan Rudess is playing a B flat chord. That's an E on the bottom of a B flat. An incredibly dissonant chord. So really it's E major. And then B flat with an E in the bass. That's the flatted 5th chord. Alright? Incredibly dissonant. Okay? And then basically we go to an A chord. Alright? An A major chord. Okay? It's pretty cool, huh? Now immediately after that, so that would be considered the 4 chord, we do this. Alright, that's that D sharp once again. Remember from the intro? Well, here we're using this as the root. Almost sounds more dissonant, but if you listen to the keyboards once again, he's hitting an E flat chord on top of an E. Now that is a nasty sounding chord, and I wouldn't recommend anybody play it unless they really know what they're doing. I think the Dream Theater guys know what they're doing. Maybe. Who knows? I gotta question them on this one, because this is crazy. It's craziness. So basically we have a chord progression of E major. Let's play it like the Beatles. To B flat, over E, E flat or D sharp over E. Now that's kind of insane. One more time. E major, B flat, A. Absolutely ridiculous sounding chord progression, but really, really cool. This part of the intro, which I'll call intro number 4, basically sets up some of the conventions that we're going to hear in the later verses. All right, so just listen to it real quick first. Some different chords as well, and this actually embodies the second half of the larger progression. The one that we went over before, the E, B flat, A, and E flat, that's the first part of it, and then it progresses onto this, E, B flat, A, and then F sharp. So really the last chord changes changes from an E flat or a D sharp to an F sharp chord, which we can call the kind of a secondary dominant that never actually goes to the dominant chord, all right? In fact, it goes somewhere else, which I'm going to detail right now, which is this next section here. It starts on a D, to a B, G, to a C sharp. So moving some pretty big intervals there as we move along. Now this D can be considered the flat 6 of the F sharp chord. Alright, so that's what I'm going to call it. And it's basically mode mixture between F sharp major and F sharp minor. Okay, so a D only exists within F sharp minor, but we're coming from an F sharp major chord. That's totally fine. Alright, you can do that. It's called a Picardy third when you have something that's supposed to be in minor, but then it's, you know, major. So there's the F sharp from before, and here's the D chord. Sounds pretty good. And then we go to the B chord, which could kind of be considered a, let's see, what are we going to call this? Maybe a new type of tonic for a very brief time, but it's also kind of like doing this. That could be considered the major 4 chord of the F sharp as well, but we're going right to G major after. So I'm going to say the D is the flat 6 to the F sharp. The B is the new F sharp, because then we go to G, which is the flat 6 of the B chord. Alright, so we're doing the same motion twice, basically, okay, in 2 different spots. And then we move a tritone to C sharp, because we eventually have to get back to E, and C sharp is the relative major to E, and guess where we hit? E. And then right into the first verse. Now verse 1 is probably one of the more difficult parts to explain because it revolves around a rhythmic hemiola, and that means that the drums and the guitar are playing 2 timings at once. Alright, the guitar is remaining with a consistent groove, and the drums are constantly changing the time signature as the verse moves along. Now really it's just a metal verse, alright, just very metallic, big crunchy E power chords on the bottom, and it basically just has one rhythm figure that goes through the entire way through. So if you just stick to that and kind of ignore where all the other instruments are going, or where the drums are going specifically, we'll be okay. There's no keyboards really in this section either, so it's all the guitar driving through these chords. Now in between you have chords that kind of mimic some of the other ones we saw, but it's not exact, so I'm not going to say it's a clean recapitulation here, alright? So basically we're starting off like this. I'll just play it real quick. I'll play the first part. Alright, so that's basically the rhythm. Essentially what's happening here is you have that first chord. That's an 8th note. Alright? That actually offsets the pattern that we were just playing, right? Remember that from the entire intro that we just did and the part that we just did before that? We're just continuing that same rhythm from the transition, but offsetting it by an 8th note to make way for a very creative usage of time changes. Now, let's just take a listen again. Ready? Watch. See that? It's the same exact rhythm. And it's basically like a, let's check my notes here. It's a 1E, EN, 3. Alright? 1E, EN, 3. Alright? Wherever that lands on the beat, it could land on the upbeat or it can land on the downbeat. Doesn't matter. You got to stay on top of it no matter what happens here. And by the way, while this is happening, the drums are playing in a 6/4 timing, then an 11/8 timing, then a 6/4 timing, then a 9/8 timing, okay? Comes around again, and it changes the final chord, or the final time signature to a 5/4 measure, all right? Which, by the way, brings us back into that same exact groove we played before, but just in a way that's completely haphazard and very Dream Theater-like. So to kind of illustrate this, I'm just going to play the riff, and then I'm going to have a counting track, myself counting, going along with it. So you don't have to just take my word on these time changes here. So I'm going to play the riff first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that measure of 5/4 brings us back into 5/8 with this little transition riff that goes right into the chorus section. It's going to modulate us into A minor, or A, all right, the general key of A, all right. It goes like this. It's basically just outlining the E Phrygian dominant scale, which is basically the root, the flatted second, that's the Phrygian aspect, the minor third, flatted sixth, and the fifth. All right, so it's pretty clearly within that key, all right, which we haven't seen yet. We've seen some really wacky stuff at the introduction, but this is kind of bringing it back to basics, I guess. It's an advanced scale, but it's not quite as advanced as some of the other stuff we were working on. But yeah, that leads us into the chorus section. Now the chorus section has this sort of guitar picking part, all right? There's a constant flux of 16th notes that represent the larger chord progression. So I'll kind of detail that and the chord names at the same time. We start like this. That's basically an A power chord with a tritone resolving back up to it, all right? So we can say this is some form of A. All right, we don't quite know what it is until the second chord. That's an A 7th chord, which then goes to a D 7th chord. In second inversion on the guitar, by the way. So it's basically A, A5, twice, A7, D7, which then goes nicely to an F chord. That's the flat 6 to the A, that comes from the key of A minor, and then it goes to this. And we've seen that chord a number of times here. It's basically a B flat chord without the F, but on top of an E. You could also call this an E half diminished, but I'm just going to call it a B flat over an E, or maybe like a B flat with a sharp 4 over an E. Well, the E is the sharp 4 of the B flat, but I think it has more of a B flat chord function because it immediately goes to an E, another E, but an E7. So it goes to an E dominant chord on top of the F sharp first inversion. All right, so that just tells me that this is totally different. It's supposed to be some kind of like either an E half diminished or a B flat. I think a B flat over an E being sort of the flatted 5th chord kind of makes more sense, and then that goes right into the dominant function there. All right, so that's pretty much what we got going on. Now, let's see how the words go along with this. It's very, very simple vocal line. What of the dreams a haunting curse? Little echo. Toxic and bleak, I'm getting worse. Though I've tried, I know that was the wrong words. Let me do that again. Dead inside. Though I've tried, I know I'm a broken man. Now that final dominant E with the G sharp explicitly outlines the leading tone of the A, which is going to come in again for this little transition. Which we have a really cool harmony there, right? Between the two guitars, that's what it sounds like. Very, very cool sound, and then it just does it on a higher one, right? And then it ends with with this Phrygian idea. An E Phrygian going right into, well, a big old E. Now, Phrygian pairs nicely with some of the weird altered tones that we had during the introduction, so this actually works perfectly transitioning into what will eventually become the second verse. Now, immediately following that chorus part, we hit this little breakdown where the guitar holds out, the E power chord fades off into the distance, and then the bass kind of takes over with that other riff. Just repetitively. Man, I really can't talk while playing that rhythm. It's pretty damn hard. It's way harder than walking and chewing gum, let me tell you. So the bass is playing that all by itself, basically, with the nice drum breakdown. This part reminds me of Tool, big time. Just kind of creating a vamp, a little bit of atmosphere. And then it comes into this other bit, all right, which is not quite a verse, and it's not quite a transition because it goes on for 8 measures. It basically just does this 8 times, all right, with some sound effects, and, you know, I'm pretty sure Mike Portnoy had a lot to do with that. Samples and whatnot, I have no idea where the samples come from. If anyone wants to do some research and tell me in the comments section what those samples are, that would be great. But yeah. Other than that, I'm not entirely too sure what else is going on with this. It's just like a transition bit. You can call it an interlude, maybe. Yeah, we'll call it an interlude, which then goes into verse number 2. So the second verse is actually expressed in a few different ways, all right? The first section of the verse, or the first half of the first section, is basically, I'll call this the first expression. First expression of the verse is through pedal tones, all right? And on top of those pedal tones happens the E chord, the B flat chord, the A, and the E flat. But actually the pedal breaks by that point. So really it's going E, B flat, A, and D sharp. And basically it breaks the pedal tone from that point. Even though you're still hitting E on the bottom, you are going to the different expressions of the chord. So this time it's going to be E, B flat, A, same chords, and then F sharp. Okay, and then we hit our next expression of it, which is basically this like, basically hitting just an E5 power chord. These are ringing out open. Then that's a B flat. We saw that in the chorus. That's why I'm calling it a B flat, because the B flat chord is playing on the top of this. It's just like a Lydian expression. And then A. And then we have this. Let me play that clean for you real quick. Listen to that. Oof. That's crazy. You know what that's called? An E minor major 7th chord. But since it has a D sharp in it, it's basically shoehorning that D sharp chord that we've been seeing, or the E flat chord. That's the major 7, which we saw in the intro. We're just putting a minor 3rd in there. It sounds absolutely crazy. I think my guitar might be mildly out of tune. Not really. Only with that chord. So I guess I gotta get a setup on this thing, don't I? Goddamn. But that's the sound anyway. I mean, it doesn't sound amazing either way. It's like a James Bond chord. Actually, it does sound pretty cool. But yeah. So that's what's going on with that chord, and that is an expression of the same sort of idea. And then the final expression of this verse is another riff, which basically just outlines the same chords but using arpeggios like this. Alright, so it's basically just straight up arpeggios. E7, B flat, Lydian. Alright, but also with a G in it. So this is like a G minor 6th in first inversion. A7, then F sharp 7. And then that continues to go on to those other chords we saw in the intro that was played instrumentally. This time it has some vocals on top. And you also have that. Alright, that transition is relatively the same. Let's go back to what's going on with that part. These two chords, the D and the B, are exactly the same, but this changes, alright? Which I feel with this section, and this might get, ruffle some people's feathers here, but I feel like the lyrical part on this is incredibly lazy, alright? Look, all we're doing is playing the Lydian part, which would be cool for just the guitar, and then it goes to the same Lydian moving all the way up as a chunk of skunk onto C sharp. Alright, so you got Lydian, so it's honestly just a very lazy move, a brazenly lazy move, because the vocals are just doing that. It's not very interesting. And it just moves the entire thing up in a very clunky fashion, and this is the one real major criticism I have with this song. Alright, everything else can be forgiven, but this is kind of like, hey guys, where were you on this part? You could have done something totally different, a lot cooler. And not to mention on the D and the B, he's just singing 1, 2, 3, basically singing Mary Had a Little Lamb on top of those two chords. So overall, a very lazy, I guess we can call this a pre-chorus section, which is only one of them in the song. Very, very strange. Dream Theater likes to really mess with us in terms of form, and this is another, sort of thing. We haven't seen this part since the instrumental intro, alright? And I guess now is the time to rehash all those chords that we hit in the intro and blah, 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 to fully form the idea. But, one pre-chorus, really? What's the point of that? There is no point. The second chorus basically goes on to do the exact same thing as the first one. Alright, so there's not really anything different there. That tag at the end is exactly the same. So that's going to lead us into the bridge part. Now the bridge section is split off into 4 different larger parts. Alright, so we're going to start with the first section, which is one singular idea that kind of develops over the course of 3 subsections. Then we have the keyboard solo, alright, which is also 2 separate parts. And then we have the guitar solo, which, pretty classic blues style. And the 4th section is sort of a rehash of the main riff that comes in on the first section. So, bridge section 1 starts off with a bunch of hits, alright, between Mike Portnoy and John Petrucci. And basically what's happening is Jordan Rudess is playing a kind of a crazy little keyboard line, but basically what happens here is they're just hitting hits, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5. So it's basically just a hemiola happening on top of a measure of 7/8 plus 4/4. Twice, alright? So it's 7/8, 4/4, 7/8, 4/4, but the way that the hits are feeled out are a 5/8 feel, right? Just like we've been hearing. And this also sets up the riff that comes in after, alright? So listen to those hits again, ready? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, 5. And then right into the riff that sounds like this. Alright, so that's basically a 7/8 rhythm, right? 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and then you have a rest right after that. Alright, so basically what's happening is right on the 4/4 measure that happens afterward, we're offsetting it by 1/16 note. Alright? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 1. Offset. feel so weird in the recording, all right? But basically what happens there is it also is accompanied by a B section, all right? Highly within the E Phrygian mode, but also not, because look, the first part of it is E, F sharp, G. That's a regular E minor scale. And it also reminds me of Fatal Tragedy a little bit, especially with this this sort of like Dorian line, because you have the flat 7th and then the natural 6th. Kind of reminds me of, except we never go to the C natural, but you know what I mean. Actually, we do go to the C natural. The only difference here is that we have a Phrygian ending. That is the F natural right at the end there, so the flat 2. All right, so real slow again. Offset. Now, the second time around that happens, the drums then properly express that rhythm. All right. So they go along with a right? Plays along with the guitar, and that's kind of the vibe that we got for section 1.3. All right, and that's basically it for that whole thing. We then have to hit into the keyboard solo now. And this solo section is basically made up of a mishmash of almost every single note you can think of on top of an E. All right? Now, the solo kind of expresses itself as a synthy blues solo. All right? But obviously there's a lot more going on here, and there's some weird time signatures as well that happen. You know, the solo's in 4. The part beforehand is still in that 7/8/4/4 meter. But here, I'll kind of play the grand scheme here. So. Now, honestly, it kind of sounds silly to me. You know, it's very difficult to play. It's very difficult to remember all of those notes. And actually, we're going to go through those notes right now. So it's basically E, B flat to A. That's the root, flat 5th, and the 4th. Then F sharp to D. That's the 9th and the flat 7th to the root, major 6th, minor 6th, 5th, flat 2. All right, so we're mixing together the blues, all right, with the, whoa, why is my volume down? All right, sorry about that. I don't know what the hell just happened to my amp, but this is just the kind of stuff we got to deal with off-the-cuff analyses like this, all right? I don't want to be sitting here editing for 90 hours, all right? I'm just going to give it to you hard and rough like you probably don't like it. Anyway, doesn't matter. Going back into that, we're basically hitting like every single note within a blues. That B flat to A, we'll consider that the blues. And then coming into this, we're also hitting a Dorian mode because we have this, the C sharp. Right? That is the major 6th, or the natural 6th. But then immediately goes to the flat 6th, to the 5th. So you're hitting that Fatal Tragedy type of sound. And then we have Phrygian, with the flat 2. So we're mixing together the blues, the Dorian scale, and the Phrygian scale in the rhythm. Now, I have another criticism to make about this, and it lies in the fact that of how much meaning this part actually has. You know, of course it's a solo riff, but to me, it's just not memorable at all. I listened to it once and it reminded me of, dare I say it, New Dream Theater. All right? New Dream Theater. We can consider that anything from, I guess, Systematic Chaos onward, where these riffs became increasingly more and more common, right? Just sort of like octatonic, diminished, this sort of like blues thing. It never commits to anything. It just tries to mash everything in all at once. And I don't necessarily, you know, dig on that too hard. All right. So it kind of brings me to this saying here, and I'm just going to say it. It's this: when the most difficult part to understand has the least amount of meaning in the song, then we got a problem. That's just honest criticism. We got a problem there, because this is a moment where the most technically complex part in the song is like the least interesting, and it's also the least meaningful as far as I'm concerned. I mean, okay, it's a solo riff, it gives you a keyboard solo, but what does that mean? What does that mean? It has nothing else to do with really anything else in the song. You know, it's not like it's playing over the intro or something like that. I could see it being cool if we had the you know, the keyboard playing on top of that major 7 with the flat 9th and the sharp 11th from before. That could be a cool idea, you know. But it doesn't even do that. So we're not even being consistent, and we're just being complex for the sake of being complex, which I guess is not unheard of for Dream Theater, but they've had many more examples of tracks where they've done it well, okay? And have it be cohesive, make sense, and all that good stuff. Maybe they're just jamming, maybe they're just having fun. In that case, I can't blame them, but as a, you know, a diehard fan of the band, I have to say that one bit of criticism here, because that shouldn't happen. You shouldn't have an extremely complex part and then all of a sudden have it be the least meaningful. All right? It just doesn't make any sense, and honestly, it's a crying shame. The next part is the guitar solo, which actually does a hard modulation from E minor to G minor. All right? So coming out of this, it's like... use that B chord. It uses that B chord. Instead of it being a 5 chord, it turns it into a, basically like if B minor were the new 1 chord, and then you're just going, those 2 chords play very well together, all right? And because of that, you're able to get right into G minor, no problem. And basically, I mean, the rhythm is just kind of like a... like a G minor to a C to every once in a while is an E flat, but it's just all over a G minor pedal for the most part. And a lot of the licks that are played on top of that, a lot of G minor blues, right? A little bit of some pinch harmonic action in. Some chromaticism, actually a lot of chromaticism. And then you have this cool little thing. I actually learned that lick. Some licks I did learn here, all right? And I'll sneak them in here. But, yeah. This is basically utilizing our, kind of like a very jazzy type of idea. You have the flat third going to the major third, like this. Super jazzy. And then the 5th going to the 13th. The 13th is a very jazzy chord. So you can say it's like G13, right? And then we hop up to here. That's the 9th to the flatted 3rd, or the sharp 9th, maybe you want to call it. And then having that nice half-step bend. These are all bluesy ass notes. We have sort of like this open string thing. Step and a half bend. That's obviously not what he plays, but he's using open notes to create that sound. Some of this kind of reminds me of Paradigm Shift, but a little bit slower. Kind of a cool sound, you know. I fucked up one note, I know, I hear it. I'm doing this completely improvised here, guys, you know. I learned a lot of this stuff, but man, I'm just ripping. I'm just having fun right now, man, in all honesty. You know, sometimes the other analysis videos can get very cumbersome on my life, so I'm trying to just have some non-cumbersome stuff here. And just hang out with you guys, talk about some Dream Theater stuff. But then we have like some really cool stuff going where he has this descending line, or, well, it starts off ascending. That's basically just all chromatics. Very, very common. It's within sort of like a G type of position. Then it does something like this. That kind of thing right there is actually outlining a C seventh chord. Right? So like I said before, it was outlining a G minor and a C chord. Well, then a G minor blues again to a C7 in the lower octave. Alright, so a lot of these are very consistent patterns. And we have this super cool lick right here. That's probably my favorite part of the entire solo. That's hence why I learned it. But yeah, it's basically just outlining this like... That's basically playing around with the tritone or the blue note, alright? So that's strict out blues, strictly blues. Adding a little bit of blues again, but coming down just a G minor 7th chord. And then going up a G minor 7th chord. But, watch. That's a G minor 11th. You add the C on the top, that's the top 4th. It's also called an 11th. So that's G minor 11th. I've been waiting for that to come back. John Petrucci's been holding off on the 11th chords. The last analysis I did on Lines in the Sand, lots of 11th chords. Really, really cool stuff. Jazzy sound, very open sound. A lot of stuff going on. A lot of layers, right? And then right after that we have... That's just cool, man. That's just cool. Sounds like a train coming through the yard. Just playing arcade games with sunglasses on. Can you imagine a train, a giant bullet train, coming into an arcade and playing some Mortal Kombat? I can, and that sound is completely reminiscent of it. The rest of it is just kind of like, you know, a lot of pentatonic ideas. Stuff like that. Right? You understand. Pentatonics sound like pentatonics, alright? And obviously accompany the blues very well, because a pentatonic is really just a simpler form of the blues. So after the guitar solo, we hit back into the last part of the bridge, which rehashes the riff we saw, the Fatal Tragedy style riff, but it plays it strictly along with the 7/8 plus 4/4. I'm going to call it 7/8 plus 8/8 as I'm counting. I'm going to count it in eighth notes, but this is what we got going on here. So it's basically like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Alright, once again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Alright, that's how you represent 7/8 and 4/4. Alright, there's 8/8 notes in 4/4. Then it comes up here the last time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Alright, so just make sure you hit those changes, right? Then it just takes it up the octave. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Alright, now the interesting part about this riff is, once again, it mixes the natural minor scale, the Dorian scale, and the Phrygian scale all in one fell swoop. But I think this is a cooler idea than what we saw on the keyboard solo, right? Just a bunch of moving chords and stuff. Just silly. Don't get me started on that part. But yeah, so here's the natural minor, Dorian, back to natural minor, but this time it's Phrygian because you have the flat 2 down on the bottom there. And the same thing is just repeated up the octave, and that's about all you got. The next transition is basically the same as it's been. That's basically going up the Phrygian dominant, but this time with octaves. Alright, we've seen 3 different variations of that so far as well. And then the 4th variation is this. Alright, you see that? It's basically just E, F, G sharp, and C, B, and A. Alright, so that's kind of all we got. And yeah, we then hit into the final version of the chorus, which is also somewhat different. Alright, so the final chorus is basically more spacious. It leaves a little bit more room for the vocals to be on top. There's also completely different lyrics, and it's a little more repetitive as well. So remember how the other part was like this? Well, instead of being like that, it's more just like this. Just very drony. Okay, it's still basically the same exact part, but it stops halfway through. So once we get to that D7, it resets the order of the chords again, but also becomes more rhythmic. So right, and then we have some different notes. And then eventually we hit this sort of like E minor 6, which replaces the E7 from before, and then we have an E flat fully diminished 7th, which kind of comes in there, but that replaces the D7. Alright, now an E flat fully diminished 7th is like an altered D7th chord, or like a flatted 9th. Alright, if you take a look at the notes of D, F sharp, A, and C, if you split that up and you go E flat, or better yet, D sharp, F sharp, A, C, you get all minor thirds. Alright, you can still consider it a D7 but with a flatted 9th. It just adds a little bit of extra color. Then the F chord is then represented as this D minor 6th, alright, which is just a harmonic extension of F. Alright, so basically the same chord, really. Alright? Back in here, that same old story with the E minor half diminished, the E half diminished, or the B flat over E, we called it, and then the E7 over G sharp to basically go back into the A for another tag. Alright, now the tag is totally different, so let me just play through, what's kind of going on with this, this chorus here. That whole thing that crosses mine to bear once again goes back to the leading tone, alright, so which heads up back to A, alright, for the tag, which basically goes A, broken man, alright, which then goes to B flat with the E still on top. This is like a flip-flop of what's been going on for the entire song. Usually we're used to the E on the bottom of the B flat, but here we have the E on the top, nice Lydian motion there. This could be the flat 6 going to A major, which is the 5 chord, and then to this last final section, D, D minor, okay, then D minor 7 over C, which is a third inversion D minor chord, B, half diminished, okay, and then F, and then this D sharp, which is basically a B with a D sharp in the bass. We're actually hitting the dominant chord there, incredible, and that does resolve back to E. Alright, so let's kind of just go through that part now. So it's like, we'll go from the cross is mine to bear. This cross is mine to right to the root note of the intro. Holy cow, that's kind of crazy. And then it just continues up from there. Remember in the actual intro, it just hits the D sharp to the F. Well, here we actually hit the root note. So maybe it's actually some resolution to this whole thing. So maybe it is a little more meaningful than I previously thought. But yeah, this continues up from E to F, flat 2, G sharp, 3rd, A sharp, sharp 4th, and then we go 5th, flat 6, major 7th, flat 2, and then to hit the big old distortion on the end there, because let's face it, that's how it's got to go. So yeah, kind of just a slightly extended version of the introduction. They add the C natural in as the only different note, and the root as well. So somewhat more radical than before, but less radical because they have the root. Kind of weird. Don't exactly understand the logic here, but I guess they just had to do something different because that leading tone on the B goes right to the E minor. Alright, so interesting kind of part there. And then we have, well, that's it. We have nothing else. Thank you everybody for coming along this journey. Hope you're enjoying these quicker videos. This kind of allows me to kind of, you know, show you some of the kinks that I can hit along the way. You know, things that can go wrong. You saw before, my amp just stopped working in the middle of it inexplicably. I had to turn the standby off and turn it back on again. Hopefully a transformer isn't blowing. That would be absolutely terrible. Hopefully it's just like a bad tube or something. Who knows? I'm not entirely sure. But it's working now, so that's all I care about, all right? When you're a musician, you know, you just cling to, you know, every last breath that your equipment has, all right? That's sort of a, definitely a lesson you learn in life. Anyway, so let me get on to my final rating of the song, my final review. It starts off very, very strongly. You know, it's not like amazing, but it starts off strong enough where you feel like something's happening. You know, it's super heavy too, super aggressive. You know, Mike Portnoy's hitting real hard on those cans, let me tell you, and you know, adding his signature stomp onto the whole situation. It's a little more repetitive than some of the other, than definitely Night Terror or some of the other Dream Theater songs, but I think that's fine. I think that's actually a nice thing. I like it when they have repetitive ideas that they mutate into a million different ways, creatively, and I think that's kind of cool. I mean, they didn't hit the mark completely on this one. You know, there's some sections where it's like, okay, you're kind of just like doing it for the sake of doing it, you know? Like, I feel like the first verse, that whole rhythmic hemiola is just kind of shoehorned in there. Even though it is a cool take on the that one rhythm, the dun 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 dun, adding another context to it. Speaking of the verse, this is the first verse I heard that had slightly more interesting vocals and lyrics. So kudos to whoever wrote that. Hopefully James Labrie did. I'm not entirely sure, but hey, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who writes the lyrics. It's, you know, just how it's performed, you know. Well, it does matter who writes it as well, but, you know, whatever. It was performed well, and it sounded a little bit more just flavorful than some of the other verses we've been used to. But I do kind of feel like certain parts of it fall victim to the new Dream Theater approach, which is kind of putting certain chord progressions and things in there just for the sake of it. Like that final tag, right, where it goes to the D minor. They really repeat themselves with that thing. You know, that sounds like something that would be on The Astonishing. You know what I mean? And I mean, I guess it works for what it's doing, but it's not very interesting. You know what I mean? It's something that I feel like Dream Theater's kind of getting stuck in a hole here with certain parts like that. And also, the keyboard solo. Like, what even is that, right? I really can't find much. There's nothing not a lot of meaning I could derive from that. I mean, it's an okay riff, but it just, you know, for something so difficult to have so little meaning, kind of, it upsets me a little bit, actually. Greatly upsetting. Let's see, some pros. The chorus section's pretty cool, man. You don't usually hear Dream Theater go dominant 7th heavy and then to a D7th. That's almost like a blues right there. So, you know, a lot of blues stuff going on, right? Especially with Petrucci solo as well, right? That's not the lick at all. I just improvised that, but hey, G minor blues nonetheless. So I like how they're kind of bringing back certain things from the old school Dream Theater, but it just feels like they're still struggling to find like a pocket, you know? And I guess it could be because, you know, Portnoy's been gone for so long. They've been used to doing one thing with Mangini. Now they're trying to get back in with Portnoy, reintegrate it. You know, I think they should just go back to old school. Just say, hey, Mike Portnoy, you're allowed to be the despot of this band. I think it might actually work out in your favor. I'm sorry, everybody. Just saying. I think you should have a little more of the creative control, you know. But whatever. Don't crucify me for saying that. Anyway, what else can I say about this track? You know, like I said, there's certain elements of like the new Dream Theater, like the rhythms, right? I feel like, you know, Portnoy is trying to fill the shoes of Mike Mangini after Mike Mangini was trying to fill the shoes of Mike Portnoy. It just doesn't quite line up. You know what I'm saying? It feels like a lot of these rhythmic hemiolas are just getting shoehorned in, right? And it's okay, you know. I mean, it's okay to have some growing pains, I guess, in this respect. But Portnoy, you can just stick to your strengths. The fans are going to love it no matter what, you know. I understand they got to do something new, you know, for a new album. But, you know, don't go away from tried and true methods of just writing a good song. That's really the most important part of all this. And I know that that is something that they embraced at one point. Far more than they do now, I think. So with that said, my final rating of the song is a C minus minus. That's right. Not quite bad enough to be a D plus, but not quite good enough to be a C minus either. I still think Night Terror is an overall better song when it comes to these two singles. I listened to Midnight Messiah as well. That one was kind of like whatever too, but I'll probably dig into that at some point with a similar style. Might have to get the old 7-string out for that one. Might need a setup though. It might be completely out of whack. The intonation might be completely destroyed. Who knows? But anyway, yeah, if you'd like to further support the channel, you can go to my Subscribe Star or my Patreon page, and you could, you could pledge whatever amount you want. I have some tiers there with some rewards and, you know, just cool perks that you get, you know, from being a member. So make sure you look at that. And also, if you want to see me make more videos, I mean, geez, these are tough. These videos are tough. But at least this kind of gives me a little bit of a break, you know. You can see some of the flaws associated with it, some of the mishaps that happen along the way. You know, me fucking up notes and stuff like that. You know, it's always fun. See your favorite content creator fuck up all the time. Yeah, I know you like that, you sadistic freaks. I'm a masochist myself, so I kind of like it too. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. You can also leave a tip on the PayPal. You can leave a like, comment, subscription. If you want further help with anything relating to music theory, just guitar playing in general, technique, chords, triads, improvisation, right? Any kind of area that you'd like to improve in your musical journey with the guitar. I even do some stuff with keyboards as well, but mostly the guitar. I'm your guy, and it'll be a grand old time if you decide to do it. One-on-one, you know, you get to ask me anything you want, all right? And I'll do my best to try and answer that as well. All right, everybody, that's going to be it. Have a good day.